Now Saint Pelin lived back in the early part of the First Era when the world was stranger than today. At the time, Tamriel was largely untamed, and our ancestors had to be brave and strong. For the woods and hills were home to things like bullmen and centaurs and fire serpents. Saint Pelin wasn't a saint at first. Of course, he was a humble man, a beadle of the chapel of Stendarr at the Bancorai garrison, where he tended to the spiritual needs of the soldiers guarding the walls. He had other tasks as well, such as bringing the sentries water when the sun was high. Now, one day he carried around his bucket dipper. He noticed there were more guards than usual. He stopped at the main gate and asked his friend, Sergeant Clancy, why that was. It is because the Grey Host is coming, said Clancy, which is a terrible army of vampires from Verkoth, and I am more than a little worried about it. Oh my, said Saint Pelin. Is there anything I could do to help you and the other soldiers? Pray for us, Pelin, said Clancy, for a great trial is upon us. Sergeant Clancy's words made Pelin anxious, so when he was done with his chores, he climbed a tall tower and looked south, and there he saw the Grey Host coming out of the desert, a whole army of Batman, wolves, and even worse things. So Pelin went back to the chapel and prayed, and he heard the sounds of battle. He prayed to Stendarr, to Akatosh, to Julianos, to Kinnereth, and all the saints for them to help. But then folk began to come into the chapel, setting up cots and tables, and bringing in the wounded soldiers for aid and surgery. Come and help us, Beetle, called the doctor. It's your strong arms we need now, not your prayers. So Pelin came and looked at the wounded soldiers and found them wondrous pale. What has happened to them, doctor? He asked. These soldiers are as white as my sheets in my bed. It is the Batman, Beetle, the doctor said. When they bite our soldiers, they drain the blood from them in great draughts, leaving them pale and empty. Horror! Cried Pelin. You're right, doctor. This is time for more than prayers. For Stendarr says, he who fights hardest prays loudest. I know nothing of fighting or of doctoring, but I will go into battle and trust Stendarr will show me what to do. So Pelin ran into the fighting at top of the great gate, where he found his friend Sergeant Clancy fighting a Batman. The vampire beat at the sergeant with its wings and tried to grip him as to bite. But Pelin grasped the Batman by the legs, so Clancy was able to kill it with his sword. This is no place for you, the sergeant cried. The Batman are at the gate, and they will soon burst it open and take the garrison. Pelin looked down and saw what the sergeant said was true. A great press of Batmen were ramming against the gates. The doors were bulging inward. Pelin cried, Is there anything we can do? The stone walls here being loosened by flying stones, said the sergeant. I'd hoped to gather enough soldiers to push it down upon the Batman. See, reinforcements are coming, but the Grey Host will be through the gates in no time before they can get here. Then I must delay them, said Pelin, and he flung himself over the battlements upon the horde of vampires. The wings of the Batman broke Pelin's fall, and he landed among the hale and alive. Vampires, cried Pelin, push not upon the gate, for what you have is here, a strong, healthy body, full of fresh, warm blood. Drink, take, have it all. And the Grey Host turned and fell upon Pelin, fastening upon his veins. Then Pelin felt himself collapsing like a wine sack as a harvest festival, and then knew that before the sergeant could gather enough soldiers that he would be drained dry. So he prayed a mighty prayer, saying, O Stendarr, God of justice, fill me with an ocean of blood, that I might beguile these demons away from the gate for a few minutes more. And Pelin felt himself filled anew with blood, flowing from beneath a very fountain. And then a divine geyser, a gorge, drew every Batman within sight to a great feeding mound before the gate. Meanwhile, Sergeant Clancy and his friends pushed against the wall above, until all of a sudden the great stones went crashing down. The Batmen were all nearly slain, and by the time the ones who weren't had gathered their wits, they saw the pursuing legions of Empress Hestra were almost upon them, and that did the end of the great host. So that is how a beetle from Bancorai garrison became a saint. Now I ask you, children, does not our time resemble that of Saint Pelin? Is there not once an army at our gates? Yes, indeed. And that's why our leaders ask each and every one of us to do as much as we can to help defend our homeland. Some of us may even have to give our lives. So when that time comes, tell yourself to have the strength to do what is needed. For I think if we have to, we can all be as strong as a humble man like Pelin. Don't you? Hello everyone and welcome back. I hope you all enjoyed that. That was The Martyrdom of Saint Pelin, a book found in the Elder Scrolls Online by Priestess Adi Rideau. Now, that is how I'm going to start today's lore episode off. I felt that would be a good idea to get a background on who Saint Pelin even is. And basically, before we begin today, I'd like to thank Ares for allowing me to use his music. And I'd also like to make a shout out to the Discord chat. Feel free to join in, link in the description below or in the channel header. Now, this is one of the community recommended videos, so I hope you enjoy. But other than that, we have 3 or 4 other community videos on the way, so be ready for that. Sorry this is coming out so late. I ended up finding myself a wee bit busy, but regardless of which, I hope you guys enjoy. Today we're going to be talking about the Knights of Saint Pelin. The Knights of Saint Pelin find their origins in Saint Pelin himself, a beadle of Stendarr who was known for his virtue and humility. Pelin did various petty tasks for the chapel of Stendarr, such as tending to the spiritual needs of the soldiers and providing the sentries with water on hot days. Now, during the year of 1029 of the First Era, Pelin worked at the Bankarai garrison, a large fortress separating Hammerfell from High Rock. A large army of vampires, wolves, and faceless shadows known as the Grey Host attacked the garrison from Verkarth, killing hundreds of soldiers of the garrison, draining the blood of the men before killing again. Saint Pelin noticed that only the blood would keep the vampires at bay, so he gave his own life in the garrison. Pelin was said to have prayed to Stendarr to provide him with an endless supply of blood, and Stendarr answered. Stendarr filled Saint Pelin with an endless supply of blood, and the vampires drank and drank and drank until they could drink no more. While the attacking army was distracted, the soldiers of the garrison took their chances and dropped the battlements atop of the enemy forces, and then charged inwards and killed the remaining soldiers. Now the knights, exactly now, they were formed in an unknown time period. We don't know when exactly they formed. We can assume that it was relatively close to when Saint Pelin was killed. Now, records of their deeds, however, exist during the times of the Second Era. During the invasion of Durkarak of the Black Drake in 542 of the Second Era, the Knights of Saint Pelin charged the city of Evermore under the command of Duke Blaise Guillemard, liberating it from the Reachman occupation. During the Alliance War, the Knights saw further action. Now, during this time, a few things go on. So, at the time, the 7th Legion conquered, more or less, the Bankarai garrison from the Knights of Saint Pelin. While more than 200 knights were present in the fortress, the Legion was proving to be too strong. Now, how the garrison fell is a bit unknown, but a few knights that survived the attack were stating different reports and aren't as reliable as one would think. One of the knights reported that Magnus General of the Legion, Septima Tharn, had infiltrated the garrison posing as a Red Guard refugee, and then unleashed Oblivion the next night. Other knights reported that giant Daedra scaled the walls and just overwhelmed the garrison there, and the dead rising from the crypt of the garrison hit them from behind. Now, the knights had set up camp at Martyr's Crossing, which originally only consisted of a 2-man outpost. This increase of a garrison at the camp also forced the Bankarai garrison to give up some of its own troops, partially leading to its capture by the Legion. This outpost was raided constantly with Legion soldiers until they were defeated by combined forces of the Knights of Saint Pelin, a group of Bandaree traders, and a Covenant trooper. Now, the Knights had also been tasked with recovering the memory stone of Makelaleki from the Crypt of Exiles, but due to the heavy action of the Knights saw in Bankarai, a Covenant troop had to do this task themselves. Now, that is all we have of any current history of the Knights of Saint Pelin. We don't, or any recorded history. So, I can only assume, since we do not have any downfall of them, we are going to see them in the future. Now, we don't get anything into the 3rd or 4th era, but I can only assume that kind of like the vigilance in Skyrim, I can assume that these guys and people are mostly similar. They probably roam High Rock, have a few outposts in High Rock, and still operate in the area. Now, considering they retook the Bankarai garrison, it's assuming that they probably have their main outpost in that base still, and they probably have small outposts such as the Martyrs Crossing, as serving as just outposts for the group. Now, is the Order still around? We don't know. Would it be cool to see them in Elder Scrolls 6? Yes, it would, because I'm assuming it's going to be in High Rock / Hammerfell. Now, how they will play a part in this, I don't know, but it'd be interesting to see how they played in the Oblivion Crisis, because assuming that they were still around in the Oblivion Crisis, it's only more than likely that the Knights of Saint Pelin would take part in this, due to their own origins and them having a history of fighting against Deja. Now, that is all we have today. What do you guys think? Do you guys think the Knights of Saint Pelin exist today? Do you think we'll see them in the future? Do you think that they played a part in the Oblivion Crisis, or were they completely wiped out? I want to know your guys' opinion in the comments below. Please let me know, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's a little bit different because of the intro, but I hope you guys find that a wee bit interesting, or a little interesting. So, as always, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.